Welcome back to another Life in the Stands podcast with Jake and Zach today. We're going to rehash, unfortunately, what happened in the Sixers Celtics series, as well as some of the other series in the second round. And then we're also going to talk a lot about the upcoming conference finals matchups. And that's going to take up the majority of our show today. So it's going to be kind of a quick one, but we are going to dive deep into the NBA world and kind of see what's going on with all these series. So, with us being Sixers fans, we are going to talk about game seven of Sixers Celtics and the whole series and kind of what happened there. We'll give our quick thoughts on it. We're going to start with that, and I'll just jump right into that. So, as far as I'm concerned, and Bender, I can't wait to hear your thoughts on this. And eventually, when we get Kyle on the next couple of episodes, we'll hear his thoughts too. But that game seven was pathetic. I watched the first half, felt pretty good going into the second half, and said, okay, Embiid and Harden aren't playing well, and it's a 3-point game. As a Sixers fan, what I've seen throughout the whole season would tell me we were in a pretty good spot in that game going into the second half. They just did not show up at all. I know a lot of people want to talk about all aspects of this Sixers team, whether it be Doc Rivers, whether it be Harden's playoff struggles, Embiid's playoff struggles, the bench, whatever it might be. Embiid had comments about needing more help and all that kind of stuff. I don't think you can place that kind of effort on Doc Rivers. Like they're NBA players. That's an NBA team. It's a game seven. If it's tied at 55 and then it turns into 80 to 58, there might be some coaching stuff in there, but at some point, players got to look themselves in the mirror and ask what's up. So I'm now of the belief that I don't know if I trust Embiid in the playoffs. I think he can have great games. I don't know if he'll be the guy that gets you out of the second round. And it pains me to say that coming off his MVP season, but I look at his press conferences after the game and I don't see a ton of upsetness or anger or like whatever it might be. Like I just see like a lack of emotion in the press conference after the game. And I'm just like sitting here wondering like what's going on? Like why? And he's like sitting there like half joking, half smiling in the press conference. I saw the clips of him going up to Tatum after game seven and joking around. Like, how do you do that in this situation? So Bender, we'll hear your thoughts, and I'm sure it'll come back to me too because I have more to share. But yeah, I mean, I was disappointed with the way the series ended. I feel like the Sixers team was really different this year. I saw them make great strides, and then I watched it all fall apart in the second half of a game seven. They didn't even look like the same team. It was disappointing.
Yeah, so I actually want to jump into the press conference stuff. I don't like what he said during the press conference. Like it's all fun and games when you want to like quote Giannis and what he previously said. Like that's funny, whatever, but that's obviously not your end goal.
Yeah,
So that obviously
and
wasn't
yeah,
Giannis's end goal to be out round one either.
and
But
not the time
that's
either. And you're
yeah,
immediately after game press conference.
yeah, and the other part I didn't like about that, and like not to take away from like the comment I just mentioned because I didn't like that either because that's also piling on to like the emotion factor that you're talking about. But he again is trying to push away the blame onto others. Like he wanted to say basically that two guys can't do it all. He needs help. Dude, like okay, so Tobias had a okay game. Like I thought he played well. He only missed threes. His only misses were threes going 1 for 7. And
Mhm.
I know that's what he's asked to do, but at least he did well otherwise. Maxi doing whatever. Obviously, he didn't blow up, like have a ginormous game to help us out or anything. And then you had help from PJ. So I don't know what he's getting at. Um,
Yeah. Well, look at his numbers for the game too. He had 15 points on 5 of 18 shooting. If he drops his normal 30 and he goes his normal 11 of 18, the Sixers win that game by 8 points, by
yeah,
nine
and
points.
I don't know what the exact stat was, but I think it was something like between him and Harden, it was 8 for 29 or something.
Yeah, eight
You're
field goal attempts made and nine turnovers.
what help do you need? How about you make some shots? How about you
Yeah.
stop waiting for a double team to show up and just shoot it in Al Horford's face? There was
Yeah.
points in that game that made me mad in the first half when he was struggling. Like he overthought his offense. I think he could have easily just faced up and shot a midi. Al Horford obviously gave him some space, but he went and dribbled straight into him and got blocked or made it difficult on
hmm
himself.
I think
So I don't know.
he did overthink his offense a ton in this series. And you got to give some credit to Al Horford for that, but at the same time, Embiid showed flashes where like you could just easily see he's the better player. And if he just puts his head down and makes a move, he got a foul call, he'd make a bucket, he'd make a midi, and he just was not in rhythm whatsoever. I saw the same thing. I don't understand. If you looked every time Joel would catch the ball on the block and face up, Al Horford would be a whole like hands length away. So if Embiid would just face up and take the one dribble pull up that he would do in rhythm over and over and over again, I feel like honestly what it was in that game 7, he missed like the first two mid range jumpers. And I didn't
Yep.
see him take an in rhythm mid range jumper the rest of the game. He
No.
completely went away from it. And then he couldn't get down low either because they kept Robert Williams in the game. And they just put Horford on him, and you could see Robert Williams just sitting under the rim, waiting for him to make a move to the rim too. But again, going back to comments, Robert Williams, am I?
Yeah,
Yeah, yeah,
I was
Robert
gonna say
Williams.
Robert Williams has some kind of like scare factor for Harden too, because it's like
Yeah,
Harden sees him off the pick and roll and is
yeah.
like, what do I
Harden
do? And he
wouldn't go
steps
up with
up.
it. Harden wouldn't go up with it at all. He didn't even look at the rim that
No,
much in game 7. And yeah, but going back to the comments about needing more help, PJ Tucker had 11 points in the first like 6 minutes of the game.
yeah, it was his first quarter all year with over 10 points or something.
Yeah. I watched that happen and I was like, oh my gosh, like, we're gonna run away with this thing. 11 points from
Yeah,
PJ Tucker in a quarter. Like Sixers
yeah,
never get that contribution.
they started out hot. PJ got hot all of a sudden, got us back into it, and then we got a tiny lead, and I was like, are we gonna like pull away like we did in previous games? And it just turned
Yeah,
out being James
I
Harden
know.
and Embiid kept them in it. And then obviously you got a almost like an anomaly of a game with Jason Tatum. I don't think you'll ever see a
Yeah.
50 bomb from him in a playoff game again. You can mark that down. A lot of people think he's capable of doing that more often than one game, but
Yeah. I don't
I
see
think
him
the
shooting from three the way he did.
no that too, and like almost every step back he takes kind of nuts.
Yeah.
But I think the Sixers offense, like you want to say, oh, we're loaded, we got superstars, we got talent, we got, and it's all offense. Like obviously that's what our team's based on. It's not defense outside of
Hmm.
Embiid at the rim. Um, but we're very predictable. You're either seeing a Joel Embiid post up, like mid post or low post, or and he's taking too long. So he's like playing in slow
Yep.
motion, taking too long, waiting for a double team,
Yep.
or trying to draw a foul in the playoffs when you know they haven't been calling it that way the last two series. And then
Yep.
the other look is the pick and roll where Harden's hesitant. So why
Hmm.
are you not giving other guys chances? Tobias was hot, like after he got that Charlie horse or bang knees or whatever.
Yeah, he came out firing.
Yeah, he made a couple shots in a row, and then all of a sudden you take him out of the game. He comes back in the second quarter, and then you don't go back to him.
Yeah, he doesn't get the ball. I mean, even Maxi, I feel like when I watch Maxi play out of that pick and roll that they normally have with Harden and Embiid, he's so hesitant. But it's
Yeah,
because he's watching Harden run it, and you feel like the only thing you're allowed to do is throw the pocket pass to Embiid out of the whole pick and roll. The amount of times I saw Harden at the rim looking like he's about to go for a layup and then either dish it out to either corner was ridiculous in game 7. One of
yeah, and
those has got to go up to the rim. I don't know if he had a shot at the rim at all.
I think our other players need to stop being so focused on what Embiid's going to do with the ball because James Harden, I think, plays better in the pick and roll with Paul Reed because Paul Reed at least dives harder to the basket. So now
Yeah,
you have to
that's
make
true
a
too.
decision because Embiid sits at like mid range off of the pick and roll just for
Hmm.
like his own game. But he could easily just be a roll guy and a dunk guy. Like you're
Yeah,
again overthinking.
overthinking. Yeah, and this is why when I say like I'm kind of the belief now that I don't know if Embiid is your guy. I watched Jason Tatum get the ball at the wing, and you couldn't double him.
No,
He's like by the time he's past that first guy, now he's in the lane with the full head of steam. And even if you were going to bring that double team, he's going to sidestep, he's going to euro, he's going to get around that, he's going to finish around that anyway. You can't do that with Embiid. You got to put him at the low block at the nail or put him in a pick and roll. And when he's struggling like he was, there's not anything else you can do with him. So yes, he has so many other impacts in the game. He's coming off his MVP season, but now I look at the whole situation and what I'm really paying attention to, and maybe this could help transition. I don't know if we're ready for this yet to talk about the conference finals, but I'm paying attention a lot to that Jokic-led Nuggets team. Because if that team doesn't go all the way this year, I'm going to start looking at centers like I look at running backs in the NFL, where
yeah,
it's not a high impact position anymore.
no. I kind of have some extra thoughts to build on top of it too, because James Harden made a comment in the presser as well that was kind of like well, it's only our first full year together, and I don't like that either because we kind of built what I think is a super team. You obviously look at other teams that have been around for a while, like the Bucks and the Celtics have played together, which I think also was a major factor. Like the Celtics have like core has been together for a long time.
Hmm.
The starting five, and then you basically have a starting like 1-2 between Brogdon and Derek White off the bench. So I
Yep.
don't think like saying you haven't been together for that long and kind of throwing that out as an excuse. I don't like that comment either. Like
Yeah.
you are James Harden, you are Joel Embiid. Don't shoot like crap.
Yeah. Yeah. Show up and look like you care.
Yeah,
It didn't
that's
look like they cared in the last bit of that game. It didn't look like they cared at the end of game six, which
yeah, that too, because we could have closed that out and we wouldn't even be talking about this.
right. Yeah. And then how different is the conversation we're having if they close that series out in game six? So yeah, it definitely is really frustrating. I don't like a lot of the comments they made. I just saw a report hit my phone a little while ago too that says Harden won't play for Doc. So apparently that's now already becoming a story that Harden and Doc's relationship apparently wasn't great, and that Harden won't come back to Philly if Doc is still there. Who knows what's going to happen at this point with the rest of this team? I even look at things like PJ Tucker's contract for the next 2 years now, and
Yeah,
and what and
just
what we
stuck.
do with that. Yeah, right. So that's what that's what makes it hard. Like with this Philly team, like how do you even blow it up? Tobias Harris has 1 year left. You send him anywhere,
Well,
it's diminished value
do you want to
because
get
he's
into
only
that?
got 1 year left. Do you
Do you
trade
want
Embiid?
do you want
What
to
do you
get
do
into
with?
the
I
next
think we
segment
should.
of
I think we should wait for Kyle to have like a full on conversation about that. But we are going to jump into the next segment where we'll have a brief conversation about what we think could happen here.
that?
Um,
Yeah.
But we'll kick us off with that Bender. We're gonna do a little my GM section, where Bender's gonna pretend to be Daryl Morey, and he's gonna tell us what he thinks could happen with the Sixers. Like I mentioned, eventually we'll have Kyle back on the podcast, and with him being such a naysayer Sixers fan, we will get his thoughts on it as well, unless he says we should bring back Ben Simmons. But until
Yeah, then he's
then,
just banned then.
yeah. But until then, Bender, let's hear your thoughts as if you were Daryl Morey.
Yeah, so it's kind of funny that you brought up Daryl Morey. I think from what I heard today, if he ends up thinking about um, giving James Harden like a larger contract, that he might actually get fired. So that's an interesting topic, but we can get to that a different time. The more simple rebuild that would keep us in contention that I think makes more sense. This is the option I wanted prior to the James Harden trade. If you remember those conversations, and you're going to know exactly I'm bringing up on this one. I
Yep.
want Dame Lillard. So I think there's a way to do it. James Harden obviously wants to go to Houston. Houston has a bunch of young talent. So I think, and I don't know what Houston's willing to give up, and they obviously have some kind of top pick, got to wait on the lottery. Um, but send some young guys to Portland who's going to rebuild if they get rid of Dame. Send James to Houston and send Dame to us, the Sixers. I think what you were talking about, Embiid might not be that guy to lead us. Um, I think it's much needed in a fourth quarter more than anything. And just to clutch up and have a go-to guy, I think Dame Lillard can be that guy, and you don't have to blow up the roster that way. If for some reason James Harden doesn't want to leave or just straight up walks and we can't trade him, whatever happens there. The trades I want to see happen, I want to get rid of Embiid and I want to get rid of Harden. And I would run Maxi at the one instead of the two and let him develop as a point guard because I think he's a very good downhill player. I think Embiid getting traded, we'd have to get some kind of superstar and other rotation players in that. So it would just be more of like a depth team than a superstar type team. And I don't know what that would consist of. I heard um, something about like Julius Randle, RJ Barrett, and a bunch of stuff, um, just like random stuff like that. And I wouldn't be a fan of that, but there is options. If you're going to trade the MVP of the league, you do have options.
Yep.
But I think if you trade Harden, trade Embiid, you get one or two superstars plus depth out of that, and you have a team still. It's not a
Hmm.
full blown process again, but I think trading Embiid might be a viable option because you don't have to worry about bringing up the process crap anymore.
Yeah.
And you can just take that thought and kick it to the curb and just have a full reset and still be competitive that way.
Yeah. I mean, I don't disagree. I think, you know, trading Embiid would provide a ton of value for the Sixers at this point. It would have to be KD Gobert level, compensation. So that would be really interesting. I would be excited to hear about what kinds of trade packages other teams would dish out for an Embiid. I would love to see a high profile wing scorer for sure in a package like that. I'm kind of on the same boat as you, where I don't really know exactly what that package would look like because there are so many options when you get into contracts of that size and players of that magnitude. Like there's a lot of things that can happen, but I will touch on your Dame Lillard comments because I think those are interesting because I have also thought about Dame Lillard a lot. My thing with Dame Lillard is that if we went that route, we'd have to put Lillard and Maxey on the court together.
I'm not too
And
worried about it.
that would concern me defensively. Um,
I mean, James
I think that'd
Harden's
be
not exactly.
difficult.
I mean, James Harden's not exactly like the best defender. He did give effort. Can't say he didn't give effort, but
Yeah,
I
and that's
think.
true.
But Dame can get you 30 or at least 20. Let's say 20 consistently.
Hmm.
James Harden had a bunch of games that cost us in this series, so I
Yeah,
don't know.
yeah, but you have to remember Dame also goes through dry spells where he'll shoot 1 of 9 and 1 of 11 from 3-point games, and he'll do that over a 2 week span. So he does have stretches like that as well. And yes, he's hit some big time shots. He's been a great playoff performer. He's needed more guys around him, but it's also hard for me to believe that Dame is that winner that's going to come in and push the Sixers over the edge.
Quick
I don't
pause.
know if
Do you have
yeah.
any thought on trading Maxi at all, or just keep him? Like he's the stone that we're gonna
Well,
keep.
and that's kind of why I bring up the Dame Lillard thing because it's a really interesting conversation, especially if Harden is going to walk. Now, you brought up like the three-way trade scenario with Houston and Portland. I think that that actually is something that's pretty plausible. Like I think that that makes a lot of sense.
Yeah,
But in the event that that doesn't happen and Harden just walks, to go get Dame, you probably do have to get rid of Maxey. But that's something where you have to kind of consider like
yeah.
what's the difference? What's the difference at that point?
It
If
would
you
be
tell
more of a win
Maxi to
now.
go, if you tell Maxi to go be Dame, I'm not saying he's going to go be as consistent, but I bet you if you now remove Harden, you add another, Jalen McDaniels, DeAnthony Melton type wing player, and you tell Maxi to go be that guy that does put up 30 a game. I bet you next year he could be pushing. He could be pushing that. Because what he averaged this year, like 22 or 23 a game?
Close to it, yeah.
Right? So, but that's also with playing with Harden and Embiid. So you take
Yeah,
Harden out of that mix, you give him some more role players, you let him kind of take on that role you would have given to Dame. I don't know if it's that different, and you're on a way cheaper contract and you're a decade younger. So I don't know.
I think
There's a lot of ways you could go with the Sixers team. There is a lot more flexibility than there has been in years past. It'll be interesting.
the only way I'd go for Dame is if it's in that three-team deal. Because then
Yeah.
obviously you get to keep Maxi with that. But again, the league is so offensively based that I wouldn't be worried about it. I think it
Yeah.
just brings an explosiveness to our team and a different type of pick and roll. I think
Hmm.
Dame is much more aggressive off of that. And I think
Shooting
that's
from
yeah, I
deep.
think that's the difference for a lot of what's the Sixers' problems. Something we
Hmm.
didn't touch on, but if Doc Rivers ends up getting fired, because I think that is a thing. Even if James Harden leaves, Doc Rivers might get fired just to kind of
Yeah.
reset. Um,
Yeah.
the coach I would like to bring in is Monty Williams, and he coached under Brett Brown a couple years ago before he became the Suns head coach. So I
Right.
think if you bring in him, at least he's been around Tobias and Embiid for a little bit of time.
Yeah.
So I think that would be the right option for us. I don't like Mike Budenholzer. Again, I think that's kind of like a another choke artist. I know he won a championship, but
Yeah.
I don't trust that situation.
What do you
And
think
I
about
actually
Nick Nurse?
I wouldn't mind that either because I think he's somebody that can kind of like get in your grill a little bit, and I think that's what we need.
Yeah.
Not just
Yeah.
from a player standpoint with PJ, but I wouldn't mind Nick Nurse, but I would go for Monty first just because of the
Yeah.
familiar
Hmm.
faces.
Hmm.
Uh, Something I was going to ask you, and I saw this. I'm sure you've seen it. Embiid is the only MVP to never make a conference finals, and another stat is that he's 0-3 in game sevens. So, and I know the ones, the Kawhi, like quadruple bounce or whatever it was, and he
Hmm.
traveled, and that'll forever make me mad that they didn't call it travel or anything. But does that start throwing Embiid into the choke artist category with Harden in the playoffs and Doc Rivers in the playoffs? Like, do we have three choke artists all on the same team?
I mean, you have to start asking questions. I think if you look at this year, a lot of people probably were looking at this as their chance to go prove everyone wrong. And they did exactly what everyone expected them to. That's not a great look. If you go all the way back to the beginning of our conversation and you think about the effort level with Embiid, I think there's really something to consider there too. 0-3 in game sevens. Yeah, you have the Kawhi game, but you also have the Atlanta Hawks game. The
Yeah,
Atlanta
so
Hawks had no business even being in a game seven with them, right? Like that should not have even been a 7 game series. Now you have this game seven where you fall flat on your face in the second half, you don't show up, and then you call your teammates out afterwards while you're joking around with Tatum after his 50-point game. That doesn't look great.
just always an excuse somewhere.
And yeah, there's always an excuse. And I know Doc Rivers also mentioned, oh, like, Joel Embiid deserves a break from injuries. Yeah, he does. Maybe he had a little bit of a banged up knee, but guess what? Jalen Brown and Jason Tatum were banged up. I guarantee you every single one of those Celtics players were banged up. Grant Williams had his face smashed into the ground.
Every,
Like everybody in the playoffs is banged up. Like I'm sorry, and I know Joel Embiid's
yeah,
he's getting hung on, he's getting grabbed and slapped, and like he deals with more physical punishment than just about any other player in the league.
but at this
Top
point in the
five in that
season,
category.
everybody
But
has some kind of injury.
everybody has it. So like and like I almost saw like a sense of relief from Embiid in his press conference
Yeah,
that the season was over.
yeah. So I don't know. Maybe it sunk in pretty early because we went down 20 pretty early in that second half. Uh, that's my only thought on why he was so open to just saying stuff right away. It wasn't like
Yeah,
a last second shot where he was crying going back and whatever else.
and
Um,
yeah, and like that may be true, but then again, like I just look at you as even less of a competitor then because you went down by 20 in the second half of a game seven, and instead of going on any kind of a run, you packed it in and started getting ready for your post game press conference where you're gonna quote Giannis. Like
and,
I just like the
and I
lack of
know,
competitiveness and energy and
yeah, and I know Jimmy Butler's his friend, his guy, but it makes me wonder if Jimmy Butler wasn't just going at Ben Simmons in that comment anymore about like level of effort and just I
Mhm.
don't know, just emotion and everything.
Yeah. Yeah, this Sixers team, and we should get under our last topic here soon, but honestly,
Mm,
this Sixers team, watching them this season, it, it looked like they had that this year. It looked like they had that resiliency, that effort when you didn't expect them to have effort. It didn't look like Sixers teams led by Embiid in the past 2 or 3 years where they did fold. It didn't look like that this year. So to see them do that in that game seven, I think that to me is the most disappointing part because it feels like it just wiped out all that progress
yeah,
of who this team was. And now it feels like after what I would have called a successful season, now yeah, I mean, it just feels like it was all for naught. And you're right back to where you started, where you don't
yeah.
trust anyone on that roster.
Quick comments, but I made a comment about the loser of that series would be going through a rebuild. Just so happens to be us in some way, shape, or form.
Hmm.
Because I was a believer that Jalen Brown would leave if they lost because he was obviously unhappy towards the end of the season. So I guess we just need to kind of figure out where we're going and see if any trades are made or if we
Yeah.
stay pat, whatever it is. So there's going to be some kind of change, and we just have to, I guess, wait and see.
Yeah.
But moving on from the Sixers, because I'm tired of that crap. What is your finals prediction going into these Western Conference finals, and why do you like whoever you have going?
Yeah, it's a good question. Like I said, I'm going to be paying careful attention to especially the Western Conference Finals to see if Jokic can pull that team into the finals and then win a championship, being the dominant player and the best player on the court as a center. Can that still be done in today's NBA day and age? Um, so as far as coming out of the West, I do think the Lakers are going to come out of the West. I think Anthony Davis is going to give Jokic a lot of problems. I think the athleticism there is going to give Jokic a lot of problems. I think the Nuggets up to this point have not dealt with much length. and the teams that they've played against. And, even the Suns after adding KD, they're not a huge team because of the fact that they got rid of Cam Johnson and Mikal Bridges and as part of that trade. So I don't think the Nuggets have really truly been challenged. And then even the Timberwolves series, like not a real challenge there. And Rudy Gobert, although he's a defensive player of the year, is not the same defensive player that Anthony Davis is. So
Mobile.
yeah, mobile, a little bouncier, not as much of a stiff. Um, I would keep going, but I would upset too many Rudy Gobert people here in Utah. So I am going to take the Lakers coming out of the Western Conference. I feel like that makes the most sense. And then out of the East, we talked about it when we first talked about all the first round matchups in the playoffs this year. We talked about how if the Heat were able to make a run and get to this point, they'd probably be the most dangerous team. And I'm looking at this Celtics Heat series, and I'm saying to myself, the Heat look a lot more dangerous than the Celtics right now. Sure, Jason Tatum had his big game. They made the Sixers look bad in game seven, but it doesn't take a lot to make the Sixers look bad in game seven when Joel Embiid's on the court and Doc Rivers is coaching your team. I
Yeah.
think that you mentioned the Jalen Brown stuff. I think there's still some stuff going on there. I don't think that that's fully solved. I don't think that it will be fully solved. Even if they win it all this year, I would not be surprised to see one of them move on from the Celtics in the next year or two, even if it's not this offseason, maybe it's next offseason, maybe they wait a year. But I think that partnership is about over, whether they win something or not. So I think the Miami Heat are the far more dangerous team right now. And the closer you get to the finals and the farther along you get in that series, the closer you are to Tyler Hero coming back. And all that's going to do is provide life for that Heat squad as well. So I'm going to take Lakers Heat as my finals matchup. I'm not going to tell my finals prediction winner as of yet. And that was really long winded, but that is why I believe Lakers Heat in the NBA finals.
Yeah, I want to say great minds think alike. I had the same exact matchup.
Ding, ding,
Again,
ding.
I think all of us between me, you, and Kyle all talked about the Heat being scary for anybody, um, including the Bucks, considering they knocked out the Bucks a couple years ago as well. I like the
Yeah.
bubble rematch idea though too. I think that's kind of a cool idea. Just not talk about like basketball based, skill based, but just to see that happen again. Like the bubble
Mm-hmm.
wasn't fake. Um,
Yep. Not a fluke.
yeah, so I think Jimmy Butler is going to push them. I think the X factor for them is going to be just their 3-point shooting. I think that's been the story of their season. I think the Celtics are going to stay true to who they are, and I think you can still beat them based on how the Heat play. What worries me is if they go into a bigger lineup, how Bam's going to react to Robert Williams. Like I feel like Bam might be a non-factor if they stick with that big lineup with Horford and Williams.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and they only stuck to like a 7-man rotation the last two games against us. And
Yeah.
obviously Kevin Love's there, but Al Horford's been playing perimeter D for a very long time now that I think that's not an issue for them.
Mm-hmm.
I know I'm bringing up a bunch of issues with what might go wrong with the Heat, but I think the Heat's 3-point shooting is just not like what it was in the season. Like it was just a fluky season. Obviously, they snuck in the play-in, um, lost to the Hawks, and then got in at the end.
Right.
But I think that's not who they were. And all of a
Yeah.
sudden, as soon as they played the Bucks, everything just clicked. Again, it's right time, right place, and if you
Yeah.
get things rolling at the right time in the playoffs, you're gonna do well, and they're in the conference finals. So I think they keep that rolling. I think Jimmy Butler is going to average close to 40 this series.
I
Um,
agree. I agree. I think some of
no,
the big things in that series will be, like you said, 3-point shooting. Can Max Strus, Duncan Robinson, all those guys
Vincent,
make it up threes? Gabe Vincent. I think they're going to play a ton of zone too to try to keep those guys on the floor defensively. Because
yeah.
the zone when Philly ran it against the Celtics, I think did work well um, against the Celtics, which was kind of interesting. But yeah, continue.
If they're going to run that big lineup too and have Marcus Smart on the floor, I would bank on Al Horford and Marcus Smart shooting threes all day. I know
Yep.
Marcus Smart kind of killed us from three at the beginning of the series, but I
Yeah.
think it's the right move analytically to have those two shoot. Um, But I do want to get into the Western Conference.
Hmm.
Obviously, I have the Lakers winning that series as well. I do like the Anthony Davis matchup against Joker. Um, I feel like Joker's kind of getting away with playing, I want to say, like nobodies or immobile centers. DeAndre Ayton shows no effort, so that's kind of a walk through the park for him. Um, Talked about Gobert. I don't want to talk about him. He's disgusting. Um, Go cough on another microphone. Um,
Yeah.
but I think the X factor. So if you got Jamal Murray, who's hot, so I'm going to say he's going to be a consistent for them. Joker's going to
Yep.
be consistent.
Hmm.
D'Lo and Reeves, I think, can kind of cancel out what Jamal Murray's going to do offensively. Um, and I'm going to talk a lot of canceling out here.
Hmm.
AD and Joker going to cancel each other out because Joker doesn't play no D. Now you have LeBron. We didn't even get to LeBron. So I think LeBron's going to pull through. He had what 39 and 9 in a closeout game against the Warriors. So
Yep.
he can still do it. So I think the X factor of the series comes from the Nuggets and somebody I feel like we've been waiting on for a long time, but hasn't really shown any kind of life so far this playoffs. If Michael Porter Jr. shows up, then I think they win, but I don't see him showing up. I think he's a guy that kind of shies away and kind of like is the back burner guy for them. I would
Yep.
take Aaron Gordon trying to score over MPJ right
Yeah.
now.
Yeah. Aaron Gordon has showed up more in the playoffs for sure.
But Aaron Gordon's going to match up on LeBron, so I don't think that's going to be his job to really worry about offense. I think his points always come from cuts and whatever else, whatever motion they run around
Yeah.
Joker.
Transition. Yeah.
Yeah, so
Transition off
that
good
guy.
defense. Yeah.
I just think the Lakers are clicking at the right time. Their supporting cast is much better, in my opinion. I know Bruce Brown's playing well. KCP's there. But I like the idea of D'Lo and Reeves. Excuse me.
Yeah.
Rui, Rui still plays well. I think the
Hmm.
Lakers will need Jared Vanderbilt this series in some way, shape, or form. He kind of got moved to the bench towards the end of the series, but I think he might be needed to take MPJ out of the game, leave it to Jamal Murray and Jokic, and I think you'll have D'Lo,
Yeah.
LeBron, and AD outplay
Yeah.
those guys. So I think that's
And
how they win that. And I'm not sure how many game series you had for both, but I have Heat in 7, and I have the Nuggets losing in 6.
yeah, I think another thing to consider there too is Malik Beasley. Malik Beasley, I think, has also been out of the rotation a little bit for the Lakers, and I think he could see some time in this series, which would make it a little more interesting. So we both have Lakers Heat in the NBA Finals. You mentioned Heat in 7, Lakers in 6. I'll go the opposite. I'll actually go Heat in 6, Lakers in 7.
Hmm.
I think the Nuggets put up a really good fight. They're the 1 seed. Jokic is a little butthurt about not winning MVP. So I think they put up a really good fight. I think the Celtics are tired and beat down. They're on an emotional high from that game 7 victory, and the Heat are going to catch them off guard in game 1. I think the Heat are going to end up going up 3-1 in the series. They probably lose game 5 and then they close it out game 6 back at home. So I'm going to go Heat in 6, Lakers in 7. But we both agree in the finals matchup. So it'll be interesting to see if we're right.
Yeah, I do have two more quick thoughts. We didn't even mention the hometown kid, Lonnie Walker. Um,
Oh, yeah.
he played well for the Lakers at the end of that series. Obviously, he was the reason they won one of those games and put them ahead 3-1. And putting the Warriors down 3-1 is kind of unheard of. They usually fight back and kind of tie the series in some way. Um,
Hmm.
and Jimmy Butler has time to recover from his ankle because we stretched the series out so far that he had extra
Yep.
time. So I
Yep.
think that plays a factor. He'll be ready. Um, I
Good
think
points.
they might need Kyle Lowry in that series as well. I think Kyle Lowry will be the Marcus Smart for the Heat. But those are my final thoughts on the conference finals, and unless you had anything else.
Nope. I'm all good.
All right, so obviously this was very playoff loaded, and I think it'll continue to be this way. Draft lottery, I believe, is tomorrow. Got to wait on that. Talked about Victor and Scoot and all those guys. We'll get into that more in the off season, but expect more of a playoff loaded episode next time. And thank you guys.